piece here by Margaret Kimberly at the Black Agenda Report. Highly recommend checking out her work and Black Agenda Report in general. And do you like my t-shirt, People's Free Food Program from Melanin Apparel, obviously in reference to the Black Panther Party program, which ran that. So this is Freedom Rider, Biden, Putin, and the Press, which I'm assuming this will basically get into how Biden handpicked which media he would have at this summit, what questions they could ask, and then, all these same people Putin allowed to ask him any questions, but yet Biden didn't allow any journalists from Russia to actually question him. So who's, really ducking from who in this case? Corporate media claims that President Biden went easy on Putin outside the G7 meeting. That's only because Biden preferred to sic the imperial press hounds in the Russian president. It's true. Corporate media in the U.S. works hand in hand with the state and promotes its neoliberal and imperialist agenda. Hard to argue with that. There's great continuity, I should say, from admin to admin, and nowhere is that more obvious in the realm of foreign policy, which obviously has hugely disastrous consequences for people outside of the U.S. borders. The duopoly war party consensus doesn't just dominate in the White House and Congress, but also in TV, news, and newspapers. The recent summit between Biden and Putin demonstrated that the media sees themselves as government servants, stenographers for the state. They have little interest in being adversarial or keeping the public informed of anything meaningful. And if they did, they wouldn't be in those positions, obviously. Biden's team carefully chose, as I alluded to, who would chose to be allowed to question him at his press conference, and no Russian media were invited. Pretty telling, right? And yet, Putin fielded all of these adversarial questions from U.S. media, but Biden, he's scared. He couldn't handle it, obviously. In contrast, American reporters are among those at Putin's press conference, and they gave him no consideration. Journalists are supposed to ask tough questions, but ideally those questions should further our understanding of events completely. If a head of state is put on the spot, it ought to be because important issues are being addressed. That's not the treatment Putin received. To be clear, he isn't owed kid gloves treatment, but Americans who take time to watch should learn something other than Putin is evil trope repeated endlessly. But that is what they got from one of the few black reporters who had a chance to question a head of state after an historic meeting. Rachel Scott of ABC asked, the list of your political opponents who are dead, imprisoned, or jailed is long. Alexei Navalny, whose org calls for free and fair elections and an end to corruption, but Russia has outlawed that org, calling it extremist, and you have now prevented anyone who supports him to run for office. So my question is, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of? And yet, none of these reporters question Biden about the continued persecution of Julian Assange. Pretty telling, right? Putin politely explained that the U.S. has declared Russia an enemy and openly supports people who want to bring about regime change. Americans may be stuck in propaganda mode from the Soviet era and see Russia as a land of revolution, but most Russians are horrified by protests regardless of their opinions of Putin. Neither the Russian public nor their president are supportive of anyone seen as violating the order which they crave. Navalny may be a big name in the U.S., but he is an irrelevance in his homeland. All the fraudulence of Russiagate has been accepted as if by fact by the media, and they pursued the same line of questioning with Biden, positing that Russia interfered in U.S. elections and is responsible for every cyber attack taking place in the country. Smoothie action. So good. Biden didn't disappoint going along what has been disproven. In doing so, told one of the biggest lies ever uttered by America. Oh, yeah. His credibility worldwide shrinks. I mean, for fuck's sake, outside of the U.S., the United States is viewed as the shithole country that it is for all the death and destruction that it visits upon countries that don't conform to, what the U.S. empire wants. Let's get it straight. How would it be if the U.S. were viewed by the rest of the world as interfering with decisions directly of other countries and nobody ever knew it? That's what they're fucking doing all the time, for fuck's sake. Syria, Venezuela, Bolivia, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Nicaragua, Guatemala in the past. I mean, for God's... El Salvador. Philippines. And the list continues on. You get the point. What would it be like if we engage in activities that he engaged in? Diminish as a state of a country and is desperately trying to make sure it maintains its standing as a major world power. Seems like a lot of projection here, frankly. And so it's not just what I do, it's what the actions that other countries take, in this case Russia, that are contrary to international norm. Really? How about, the persecution of Julian Assange? The sanctions on Syria that are literally starving that country, preventing it from rebuilding. The sanctions on Iran, the sanctions on Venezuela. Fuck. I mean, so the price that they pay. They are not able to dictate what happens in the world. There are other nations of significant consequence, i.e. the United States of America. Yeah, she's on point. Biden's statement about Russia was an obvious case of projection. There are at least 80 instances of the U.S. subverting other governments since World War II. One of the most infamous is the 96 Russian election, which put Putin's mentor, Yeltsin, in power. It is the U.S. that struggles to dictate to the rest of the world and fears losing its status as a hegemon, 100%. But Biden received no follow-up questions after telling his whopper of lie. The only pushback was again in regard to claims of Russia wrongdoing and whether he was up to the task of punishing Putin. Jesus Christ. And again, like, you got to really be drunk on some of this liberal propaganda to be still buying into that fucking Russiagate shit. That shit was fucking debunked since Jump Street. Again, it was projection because the Democratic Party, the Democratic elite, the media hacks didn't want to actually think, wow, this is how horrible Hillary Clinton was, how unliked, how unpopular she was, that she was able to lose to a literal reality TV show host buffoon. Obviously, that's Donald Trump. Despite all claims of freedom and democracy, the corporate media in this country only repeat what they're told. Again, stenographers for the state. They are partners with the people and institutions they should be investigating. Of course, this is why Black Agenda Report and sites like it play such a vital role. If not for news from a left perspective, the truth would rarely see the light of day. Margaret Kimberly, Black Agenda Report. Again, highly recommend her work and that of Black Agenda Report in general. I mean, it says it all that Biden handpicked which reporters would attend, probably gave them a list of questions, a list of topics to ask, but no Russian media was invited. Like the video if you like the damn video, subscribe for more content, peace, much